The peptide industry is entering a pivotal phase. Once confined largely to research environments and specialized medical settings, peptides are now part of mainstream discussions around longevity, metabolic optimization, immune resilience, and regenerative health. Consumer interest is rising. Venture capital is flowing into biotech and preventative health platforms. Clinics are expanding their diagnostic and therapeutic capabilities. Growth alone does not guarantee maturity. In many emerging health sectors, rapid expansion can outpace infrastructure. Without disciplined sourcing, contamination testing, and responsible formulation standards, innovation risks becoming noise. The supplement industry offers a clear historical example of what happens when demand accelerates faster than quality control. For health entrepreneur and investor William Basta, the lesson is straightforward. Innovation must be structured. Transparency must come before scale. Longevity is no longer viewed as a niche interest. It has evolved into a systems conversation. Immune modulation, mitochondrial efficiency, inflammation control, stress response, and metabolic stability are increasingly understood as interconnected drivers of long-term health. In human healthcare ventures such as Nirvana Health, Basta has focused on proactive care models built around early intervention and measurable biomarkers. The premise is simple. Decline rarely begins loudly. It develops quietly through subtle physiological shifts that compound over time. This system's first philosophy extends beyond human care. It informs how emerging industries, including peptides and supplementation, should approach growth. When industries focus on single outcomes rather than underlying systems, they often create reactive markets. When they focus on infrastructure, validation, and discipline, they build durable ones. The broader supplement market provides an important case study. For decades, inconsistent labeling, underdosed formulas, proprietary ingredient masking, and exaggerated marketing claims created consumer skepticism. While many responsible companies invested in quality control, others relied heavily on branding and trend cycles. Regulatory scrutiny eventually intensified. Consumer trust fractured. Reputable brands were forced to work harder to distinguish themselves from poorly formulated competitors. The peptide sector now stands at a similar crossroads. The science is compelling. The demand is real. Yet without shared standards around contamination testing, sourcing verification, and dosing integrity, the category risks being labeled as loosely governed. Basta believes the next generation of health brands must proactively choose transparency rather than waiting for enforcement to impose it. In emerging health sectors, ethical sourcing cannot rely on branding language alone. It requires documentation. That includes verified supplier compliance histories, clear geographic origin disclosures, batch-level validation, third-party lab testing, and certificates of analysis that are accessible and understandable. It also requires restraint. More ingredients do not equate to better outcomes. Thoughtful formulation demands biological plausibility, compatibility, and rational dosing. From a venture capital perspective, companies that build disciplined supply chains reduce long-term risk. Those that cut corners may see early traction, but reputational damage in health markets compounds quickly. When evaluating biotech and longevity-focused ventures, Basta prioritizes biological plausibility, regulatory awareness, infrastructure discipline, ethical sourcing, and long-term defensibility. Trend-driven health companies rarely sustain durable trust. Mechanism-driven companies are far more likely to endure. Contamination testing is one of the most overlooked vulnerabilities in fast-growing categories. Heavy metals, microbial impurities, stability degradation, and inconsistent storage conditions can undermine even well-intentioned brands. Independent third-party testing should not be considered optional. It is foundational. Responsible brands screen for heavy metals and microbial contamination. They verify potency and stability. They avoid inflammatory fillers and unnecessary additives. They implement clean manufacturing standards and responsible labeling practices. In Basta's view, contamination testing protects more than consumers. It protects the longevity of the brand itself. Another critical safeguard in emerging health sectors is collaboration with experienced clinicians and formulators. Partnerships create feedback loops between theory and observation. Through his work alongside physicians such as Dr. Ajit Dhaliwal at Region Health Physicians, Basta has observed how biomarker-driven frameworks elevate product quality and clinical insight. Physician collaboration introduces oversight, pattern recognition, and responsible scaling principles that purely marketing-driven ventures often lack. That same systems-oriented thinking informs his broader ventures in longevity and preventative health. Cross-disciplinary integration between rescue communities, formulators, clinicians, and infrastructure-focused operators strengthens innovation. It also introduces accountability. Medical collaboration does not replace regulatory frameworks, but it reinforces responsible positioning. The convergence of longevity science and consumer health is not limited to human applications. Basta's involvement in Zoedi Life, a pet wellness brand inspired by rescue-driven values, reflects this broader shift. For nearly 9 years, he has shared his life with a rescued pit bull. That experience sharpened his awareness of subtle physiological shifts. Energy changes, digestive sensitivity, recovery speed, stress response. Decline begins quietly. Zoedi Life emerged from that recognition. It was shaped by first-hand rescue experience from co-founders Alex and Brady, and by a structured longevity lens informed by work in precision health systems. The pet supplement market, much like segments of the human supplement industry, has historically leaned toward reactive positioning. Products are often marketed around isolated symptoms rather than systemic resilience. Zoedi's philosophy centers on immune strength and foundational vitality rather than short-term fixes. The parallel is instructive. Whether in peptides, human supplements, or pet wellness, prevention must replace reaction as the organizing principle. Another lesson from past regulatory cycles is the importance of responsible language. Overstated claims accelerate scrutiny. Vague labeling invites skepticism. Brands operating in peptides and advanced health categories must balance optimism with restraint. Clear labeling, documented sourcing, mechanistic plausibility, and honest acknowledgement of limitations foster credibility. Scientific validation does not always require large-scale trials at inception. It does require rational dosing, established safety profiles, and alignment between marketing and mechanism. Trust compounds slowly and erodes quickly. In longevity-driven markets, that dynamic is magnified. Venture capital influences industry direction. Investors shape incentives. When capital prioritizes speed over structure, shortcuts follow. When capital rewards infrastructure discipline and regulatory awareness, stronger ecosystems emerge. Basta's advisory work in telehealth, diagnostics, and applied AI has emphasized scalable systems that preserve quality and integrity. That philosophy extends to emerging biotech and peptide ventures. Founders who understand the difference between marketing narratives and biological mechanisms tend to build more defensible companies. Infrastructure built around governance, compliance, and sourcing transparency reduces downstream friction. Investors who recognize this dynamic are more likely to back brands that withstand regulatory tightening and consumer scrutiny. Over the next 5 years, longevity science and consumer health are likely to enter what can be described as a precision era. Biomarker tracking will become more common. AI-supported personalization will expand. Preventative positioning will move closer to the center of both human and pet health conversations. With that shift will come clearer regulatory boundaries. Undisciplined brands may consolidate or disappear. Those built with documentation, transparency, and structured collaboration are more likely to persist. Consumers are becoming more informed. They are asking about sourcing, contamination testing, and manufacturing standards. They are less interested in reactive fixes and more focused on strengthening long-term health trajectories. The peptide industry can choose to evolve alongside this informed consumer base. The phrase Wild West often surfaces when industries expand faster than oversight. In health markets, that label is difficult to shake once applied. Avoiding that outcome requires proactive standard setting. It requires founders who are willing to slow down in order to build correctly. It requires investors who understand that long-term value creation is tied to credibility, not hype. The peptide industry holds genuine scientific promise. Its trajectory will depend less on marketing velocity and more on structural integrity. In health innovation, Discipline is not a constraint. It is a competitive advantage. If emerging brands prioritize transparency, ethical sourcing, documented testing, and responsible collaboration, the industry can mature into a respected pillar of modern preventative care. If they do not, history suggests regulators and consumers will force the correction. The choice remains in the hands of today's operators and investors.